Hello, everyone. Super. How's TechDays so far for you? Everything okay? Cool. You enjoy the hamburgers? I sure did. Well, basically, this is one of the mandatory slides. This is about TechDays, so if you want to Twitter something about TechDays, please use this hashtag. First, also something mandatory about myself, who's this crazy person in front of you. My name is Kris van der Mast. I am from Belgium, from the Flemish part, but the good people from Germany, they asked to do this in English, so they can also see the recording. I'm an MVP since like 2007, first for ASP.NET, since 2016 for Azure. I'm also an ASP insider. I also run the Belgian Azure user group, together with a couple of other Belgian friends. And I also have my am an organizer of Cloud Brew, which is a event going on in Mechelen this year on the 25th of November. We also welcome foreigners, so please subscribe. We're going to have a lot of international presenters. It's going to be very interesting. And also there will be beer, because, well, Belgium. First of all, show of hands, who actually already uses Visual Studio Code? What are you all peeping doing here? You can already come here and present everything. No, just kidding. Personally, I fell in love with the editor, and for quite some good reasons. But first, let's see, like, where do we stand Visual Studio Code? Because we have editors, like Notepad or Sublime, and we have like IDEs like Visual Studio, or what is it called, IntelliJ for Java, or WebStorm. Most of the time I spend my time in Visual Studio because I have to make .NET code for my clients. But often more and more I find myself also going to Visual Studio Code. And the reason for that is, for editors, it's usually like lightweight. For example, Notepad, very easy to start up, but no Intellisense or whatever. And also no workspaces, or it doesn't really understand workflows. We have that with IDEs. Well, everyone who has worked with Visual Studio, for example, knows that all those fancy editor, debugging, integrated workflow, oh, there's a WCF endpoint, I can integrate with that, I can have it have code generated for me so I can easily plug and play with that. There's wizards, it's really a very cool environment. And up to like a year ago or so, it only worked on Windows, but not multi-platform. Visual Studio Code, and since I think last week in Microsoft Ignite, they changed the logo. It used to be like fancy blue. Now it's like this rusty orange-brown color since very recently. It is also still lightweight, but you can also do debugging with it. So it's somewhere like in between. Best of all, it doesn't only run on Windows, it also runs on a Mac and also on Linux. Inside story, I also converted one of the Java developers who was working on a MacBook at the client to take a look at this. And he loves it at the moment, just for playing around with some Java code or Node.js code. Well, this session is going to be about Visual Studio Code. So let's stop the boring slide decks. Okay. Who knows this series? No? Nobody? Robotech? No? Small detail, when I was a young kid of like, I think, let me see, duplicate. Okay. We still didn't have a VCR. I got up every weekend on Saturday and Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning to watch this on TV. It's an awesome show. It was actually to propagate and to popularize manga series in the US. If you're a fan of Transformers, one of the episodes of where they go to Cybertron for the first time, one of those foldable planes, it's like it's basically a Veritech fighter from this series, because it was from the same makers, just to honor them. So at least you got to know something today already, like, yay, Kris told us that. This is Visual Studio Code. Something lightweight. And over here you already see like an explorer. I can go searching, Git integration. I don't have any changes at the moment. This looks like a squad bug, so yes, indeed, also debugging and extensions. Lots of extensions. A lot of extensions, really. There's a huge ecosystem at the moment. Why I show this is basically our website of Azure.be. We use Jekyll on GitHub pages, and our happy workflow is together with this one. So we're now like 7 people, and each time someone else has to take over. So we make posts, for example, here, of all our events. So we did already quite a lot. And this is just basically Markdown. Thing is, we just check that in on GitHub. So we just use Git from the terminal. I can say, for example, here, Git status. I didn't make any update so far, so I'm still on branch master. And this is our happy workflow. The nice thing is, thanks to one of the extensions, I can do here a view history, because I'm not the only person working on it. But I also want to see something visual, like I did some merges, I did some branching, and this is also provided in Visual Studio Code. It works pretty well for us. Best of all, GitHub Pages is free, so we have like basically free hosting for our website. If you're thinking about community-driven websites or like a small event or something, this might be an option. We're now trying to help some of the people from the Belgian community who pay like a lot of cash on a WordPress website, which is becoming obnoxious, to transfer to this model. They seem to like it at first sight. Okay, let's close this one because I don't want anything bad to happen. Also over here, you see something familiar. This is Visual Studio 2017, purple. This one was blue up so far. And here we also have the same one. This is Visual Studio Code Insiders. The cool thing is, with Visual Studio Code, you get like an updated, stable version every single month. That's a pretty fast cadence, but perhaps you want to go faster. And you want to have like nightly builds. And then you can download and install Visual Studio Code for Insiders. And every day you get like a fancy update. Of course, might be unstable. You just have to live with that. But if you like cutting edge, you might want to go for this. Best part, you can install them side by side without having any side effects. The good thing is also, if you, and not so good for me at the moment, if you open up Visual Studio Code by accidentally stopping it, you get back to the last place where you ended up before you shut it down. I'm going to start here a new window because I like something completely fresh, and everything is keyboard centered. So I just pressed Ctrl-B to show the Explorer. I can show that away. The running ant over here is something that has been bugging me since like the last couple of days. Unfortunately, there's indeed a bug, a known bug in the last version of Visual Studio that makes rendering very, very slow. And when I was going through my demos last night, everything started to crash. So I really hope now during this demo everything keeps on working. Fingers crossed. It's a known bug, as I told you. I just have to deal with it, hopefully till next week, and then I get a new version and everything is happy and peaceful again. It's just very unfortunate that I have hit this bug during a demo, of course. I can take this away. The first time you open up Visual Studio, you see here like, this is where you have been. Everyone can see at the back, by the way, or should I zoom in, or everything still okay? Okay, otherwise just yell. I know I'm in Holland, so basically everyone is very proactive over here. Cool. You can see, like, I can customize it. For example, with tools and languages. As you can see, there's a lot of support for a lot of different languages. I mainly do like C#, so I get code Intellisense in C#, thanks to OmniSharp. And also this runs on Mac. If you're more into the C++ world or Python or whatever, you can also install packages for that. Pretty cool. The tool is also very much keyboard centered. So if you like another keyboard setting, say for example, for if you're a Vim fan or for what else do they have support, like Eclipse or coming back from Atom or from Sublime, and you know those keyboard settings, and you also want to incorporate them in this, you can install keyboard settings for that as well, so you don't have to relearn. I have a personal preference, like this is a new tool, I like to get to know the standard default keyboard settings and get used to those. But that's my personal opinion. If you're more into like, hey, I want every tool that I'm working with looks and feels like Visual Studio, you can install that. Also themes. We'll see that depending on color coding, we can also install themes. There's also a humongous amount of themes. A lot of designers went happily completely nuts and made all kinds of themes. So we can basically show up all the colors. I'm a personal fan of Cobalt 2 by Wes Bos, a Canadian web designer. You can also go, for example, to the default one or something else, or high contrast. Perhaps if you're visually impaired, you might go for this one. As you can see, I hope no one is epileptic in the room. So you see and I just installed like a couple of them. I would like to go back to Cobalt 2 because, as I told you, that's my personal preference at the moment. Also, what I found in here is a interesting interface overview, just to get to know the tools. And already you can see here, if it's easier for you to see, there's still a place over here, because I noticed that you're looking, I don't want to end up with you with a neck hernia, so. And a very important command here is Control-Shift-P, because that's where all your commands are living. Some of the extensions that I already talked about, they will also install extra keyboard shortcuts, say for example for Azure or Microsoft SQL Server development. I will also show you those. They will also install extra commands and basically enhance the user experience of Visual Studio Code. What I also installed, and this is actually very handy for me as a presenter, is an interactive playground. So if you install Visual Studio Code and basically you don't know really the ins and outs of the tool yet, you might want to go and check out this one, because it shows you, and in a pretty fast-paced way, like, hey, this is what you can do with the tool. And then later on you start exploring more and more and really become a fan of the tooling. What I installed since like last week is this color picker. So let's go here, for example, more like an orange color, because I'm in the Netherlands. So here it directly changes. I can also do here, for example, Control-Shift-Alt down arrow. So I can have code blocks. Let's do that back. So basically you just follow up what they're doing. Another nice one is, for example, I can place here, pressing the Alt key, and go, for example, here and here if this doesn't get into the way. And I have blinking cursors on several places. Wow. In the past, I always refrain back to Sublime Text because it also has great editing. Since I found out about this trick, I tend to go more for quick file editing and replacing especially JSON or something else to this tool, because basically it's pretty cool. It also has Intellisense. So say, for example, are there any Node.js developers? No. Oh, everyone is a happy Microsoft.NET camper? Okay, cool. Yeah, rock on. Well, I had to do some Node.js development in the past, but I'm glad that I'm back to C# and .NET, and gives a better feeling, no? Either way, also for those people who are doing Node.js, there's something like Controlspace. Basically, it works in every language. So if I now, because here I got an error, you don't really see it that well, but there's a red squiggly over here. People who use Visual Studio, they are used to that. And here I got Intellisense, depending on the language that I'm working with. So if you installed, like we already saw before, that we have support, for example, for the language C#. We can also get C# Intellisense like this. I will try to show that also later on in the demo. Looks pretty cool, no? For basically something that's completely free and runs on different platforms. So I can here go, for example, for body. There's also lots of other parts, like, for example, doing this, or doing, whoops. Let's go here and do. And now it doesn't work, of course, because okay, and Ctrl-Shift-K, voila, to delete. Or I can rename. Say, for example, here I have the class book. I just click on it, I press F2. This also works in C#, for example. And now I can make it like TechDays. And it grasps like, hey, this is actually potentially a class, basically here a function. I can put that back now. Or I can say, for example, here, and here this is JavaScript, but it knows the interpretation of JS docs. So I can here do like new book. Oops. And it knows that I have a title and that I have an author. Pretty cool, no? Of course, also formatting, like we're used to. What was it again? Alt-Shift-F. Cool. Since recently also code folding. Well, all nice tricks. And the good thing is every month a new version is coming out. Every time they try to add something new. Pretty nice. By the way, if you have questions, just shoot. And otherwise, I'll be here for also the rest of the afternoon and tomorrow. So just come, we grab a coffee together and we talk about things, especially Visual Studio Code or Azure. All kinds of stuff. Also, if you're used to, like, yeah, I told you there's something with the rendering in the latest version. Unfortunately, I was really going nuts last night. Well, I just got to the hotel. I was trying the last time my demos if the Wi-Fi is okay, if everything's still working, and then I found out about this. So, sorry. Yeah, well, then some other things that I wanted to show doesn't work, so it was a dilemma. Luckily, I was able to sleep a couple of hours. Okay, so here you have Emmet, which is basically like the new version of send coding. So if I write this, and it's not working at the moment apparently because it's stuck in here. Let's see if I can. Okay. Something new, and that's basically what I want. One of the things I wanted to show is like if you're working with Emmet or the good old Zen coding, like people know it also. Now we get a preview of what it's going to generate in HTML. I see some faces. Not everyone is familiar with Emmet. There's also, if you install from Mats Christensen, his Web Essentials tooling, there's also you can also inject Emmet in Visual Studio itself. Basically, for web developers, this is heaven. We can start typing something like this, for example, ul larger than li.item times 5. And if I now press tab, I get this all generated. And you can really make up like really crazy statements to generate like a full page of HTML. Pretty handy, especially if you're doing web development or quickly want to show up something. This is really cool. How am I doing on time? Well, still pretty good. Since there's not really Node.js or reactive developers in the room, I'm going to skip that demo. We still have like 25 minutes of time, so I'm going to play a bit around. And I'm going to show the command prompt. Now it's really becoming scary. Black screen, green letters. We're not on Halloween yet, otherwise I should have been in orange and dark. Everyone can see this at the back of the room, or should I increase the font? I see some nodding faces. Okay, cool. Let's go to, for example, temp. Always put things in temp. Okay. Who's already using ASP.NET Core? Or playing around with it? Ah, more people. Good. I installed recently .NET Core 2.0, and I noticed that it's a bit better because you don't have to put in like a lot of statements like .NET Restore and .NET and then go into the subfolders, etc. So now I can do like .NET New just to get a list. So this is all the stuff that I can get. For the attentive people, I also installed several of these extra templates just to generate things like, for example, with Aurelia Knockout View. Anyone actually uses Vue in Holland? It's becoming popular in Belgium, apparently. Some of my colleagues are like completely nuts. They left out React and Knockout and Angular, and they're all into the Vue thing. So what's actually very popular around here? Is it Angular or React or Angular still? Well, I'm not going to show Angular now, but if I now do .NET New and I want to make like an MVC application, and here I can type in individual so that I get some membership database behind the scenes. Let's run this. In the past, with former versions of .NET Core, I also had to do that .NET Restore myself, so it's kind of helping here me now. Okay, cool. And now I can type in code space dot, or if I want to go to the insiders preview version, I can do it like code dash insiders dot, and just open my Visual Studio Code. Something that they recently added, and I already asked the project management team, like, please get these away or make it easy for me so that I don't have to go to and press every one of those things, but just like double click or have something like a button like collapse everything else. This is something unfortunately very new. So it's on the feature request. Please go to GitHub and file a request for that so that I don't have to press every time. Something interesting over here is happening, and it's actually a bit faster than I'm used to, which is good. It asks me here like, hey, I recognize that you opened an ASP.NET Core site. Would you like to build and debug for this? It's missing for the tooling. Would you like to add them? Yes, of course, I would like. Now here you see a new folder popping up, and it has here launch.json. Well, basically, you can also write this yourself, but I don't feel trustworthy myself, especially not on stage, to do it. But this basically says like, hey, if you're on Windows, open this, start it, and also add some tasks. So here you have like the build task, etc. And it will take this argument. What does this do for me? I can now go and debug and launch it from Visual Studio Code by pressing F5. Ooh. And it takes a bit of a while, okay. You see the spinning GIF over here, so basically it's doing something. And here you see my Debug Console. And now my application is opening. Voila, ASP.NET Core 2.0 for the win. And behind the scenes, it's SQLite, so I can, for example, type in my email address over here. Register. No, I don't want. I can do here like two-factor authentication. This is basically ASP.NET Core, but running in my Visual Studio. Now the nice thing is, say for example, here I'm on my About page. I can go here to the folders. And the good thing about MVC is that everything of controllers is in controllers. I can take my home controller. This is something that I find very fancy. You also get like a code lens, what we're used to in Visual Studio Code. So here I can also press, for example, show me all the references, where this is referenced. And it will show me that, because it understands the code. Now I can place here a breakpoint. And when I go here to my home, it will hit that. So also I can debug in Visual Studio Code, just like I'm used to in Visual Studio. Remember, also works on Mac and Linux. Also, debugging is not only for ASP.NET Core, but also for other languages that support it. The other demo that I'm skipping right now, or perhaps I can show it later on if time permits, is basically a Node.js application. Also there I can put in breakpoints and have full debugging. So pretty handy. I can close this one. Also here, I can type in, for example, request. Let's see what's in there. So here, full debugging statements. I can really drill down to what we're used to. Pretty cool for a free tool, I guess. Let's go to, let's see what we have here. Email sender, no, not really interesting. This one, also not. Let's try it off. Let's try to go to this one. It's a bit more code, so more code is always good. On the right side I have a mini map. You can also turn that down if you want. I personally like it because it shows a good amount of like code. I can easily jump to it and say, for example, here my action. So here you also get like an overview, like, hey, what is this action? You get some more information. I can also F12 on that one, hopefully. Should open something, no? Let's try this one, F12. Okay, strange that didn't work with the other one. Basically here it's basically going to get some, all these symbols. You can drill down. This is basically .NET code. Go back. Also here, Controlspace. You can see Intellisense, everything what I can do on a URL. Pretty nifty. What if I have fat fingers and I make, for example, like a typo? Here you get some red squiggly, like it doesn't contain an action. I also get here the light bulb, so ooh, it's even more intelligent than I thought. So pretty cool. Kind of feels like ReSharper is baked in some part. Another part that I can show, for example, here, like my action, and I can show my problems. It also shows here like URL helper, there's something wrong with it. If there is a bunch, I can also press F8 or just going down here. Let's see, press F8. And here I get some more detailed information. I can keep on pressing F8 if I have a whole bunch of errors going on. Pretty cool. Now, of course, I want to get rid of this, escape this one. Who's impressed so far? Okay, good amount of people. Did you actually know this was possible, the people that already worked with Visual Studio Code? Yeah. No? Okay. I'm glad you're learning something new today. Awesome. How am I doing on time? Well, pretty good. Another thing I can do is, for example, create new files. And this is now basically a blank file. And I can change the language mode to say, for example, well, you have a bunch of languages that it supports, but I want to do this Markdown because basically I like Markdown. Now, if all goes well, ta-da, we also get preview and even live preview. So pretty cool. Personally, I like nowadays to keep most of the documentation of my projects as Markdown files together with my code. So this is also pretty handy for that. If you're an analyst, and this is thanks to a plugin called Mermaid. And let's see, I have here some small piece of code ready. Let's see if that also works. I get here a sequence diagram. So if you're an analyst and you also want to, well, basically this is a Markdown type for Mermaid with which you can make sequence diagrams. So as you can see here, this line will refer to this line between these two players, Alice and Bob. Pretty cool. Personally, I don't know if I would make use of it because I'm not an analyst, but perhaps I might just to quickly jot down something. There's not like code diagrams available yet in Visual Studio Code like we have Visual Studio. But this might also be interesting for basically documenting things. Actually, the kind of funny thing is for Markdown, I also found Reveal.js extension. So you can also make slide decks in Visual Studio Code with Markdown and also present them in here. If you really want to go nuts. I had to refrain because I had to make use of the PowerPoint by Microsoft. But you can if you want to. Pretty cool. Well, I've been talking already a lot of times about extensions. Did any one of you already try to make an extension yourself for those people who worked with Visual Studio Code? No? I see one hand like me. I think I did. Great. Let's try to make one. I hope it works. This morning, 2 out of the 3 times it worked. 1 time it didn't work for me. So please, demo gods, be with me. Of course, I'm not going to type in everything myself. So I have here a bunch of code ready to copy paste. You really don't want to see me failing typing everything because it's all TypeScript. Now what I can do is Yo code. This is basically Yeoman code generator. And the good people of the Visual Studio Code team, they created a generator for Visual Studio Code. What we can do is, for example, create a new extension in TypeScript or JavaScript. Basically, all extensions are made in one of these languages because it has to be multi-platform. You can also create a new color theme, language support, code snippets, another extension pack. We are not that much interested in this now. Let's call it Markdown Counter, for example. Yeah, do we want a Git? No, thanks. So now just generated several files for me. Now it's downloading a bunch of NPM packages. And luckily the internet connection is pretty fast around here, so I don't have to wait too much. And then good for me to know is here it basically says the next steps. So I have to do like cd Markdown Counter and open Visual Studio Code. And of course, unfortunately, I have to click these away. This is now the code that got generated by Yeoman. And this .src most likely looks like the code. And I'm going to close down the output file here. The output pane, sorry. And this is basically just like TypeScript. And the thing what this is going to do is just like whenever I execute this extension, it's going to show hello world. So this is my hello world demo in 30 seconds. If I now press F5, it will start up a new Visual Studio Code and has embedded that new extension that I'm now trying to debug. And this is also something new that I found out since the last update. I got an update on Tuesday, and I was like, oh yeah, install. Perhaps I should not have done that. Anyway. The cool thing is, if I now press Ctrl-Shift-P to go to my command palette and type in hello world, I get a hello world. Awesome demo. Yeah, I know. Well, we're still doing good on time. Okay. Bear with me, I'm going to take down some code. So you see, I was prepared. I wrote everything down like do this, do that, just in case I get like a brain freeze on stage. Luckily that didn't happen yet. And I'm just going to copy paste all this. Basically, I would go through my demo if I would have had more time, like 1 hour instead of 45 minutes, and show each time like the next iteration. But I'm going to show it all to you now, because there is some other stuff that I would also like to demo. So here got another class. And something else that I didn't show yet is I can also do Control-P instead of Control-Shift-P. And with this I can navigate. And if I don't know how to navigate, like here I can go to another file, just like you would do like Control-Tab in Visual Studio. But if I type the question mark, it also shows me, like with some guided help, like, hey, you can also do other stuff than just like Control-Tab. You could just go like to the debug configuration. You can go to like different panes. You can run a task, which you can set in that launch.json. You can go to a specific line, or you can also go to a symbol in the file. And here I should go to my active part. This also works, for example, in CSharp. So here it directly notices, like, hey, this is my activate function. Cool way to go around. So let's quickly replace all of this. Alt-Shift-F to do like a bit of code formatting. Take out this part. In my package.json, just contributes. Let's see what I got. And before, you notice that I had to really type in hello world in the command palette. Perhaps I don't want that. The thing is, I can also let it go off on other events. In this case, on language, and I'm going to make that Markdown, because I'm a big fan of Markdown. So whenever I have a Markdown file open, this extension will know like, hey, I have to be ready and catch events. The thing is, what it's going to do is count the words in my Markdown file. And here I subscribe to the, and here in my status bar, I will get that word count like, hey, you got so many words in your Markdown file. Say, for example, I have to write a Markdown file for my boss for 200 words, and I don't want to count each one of them. With this, I can do so. So if I now press F5, hopefully everything works. Yeah. Close this one, cancel. I really don't know where that comes from. But here, this is something new. I got like one word, because basically here I got just one header. And keep taking a look here, down there. It should update itself. Eight words. Cool, so that works. So with a bit of TypeScript or JavaScript if you want to, you can make your own extensions, put them in the marketplace, perhaps ask for a small fee or a beer or whatever you want. My Lego account is always in need of money, so always handy. Okay, cool. So pretty handy to get started with. Another thing that I quickly wanted to show you, there's also extensions for Azure. There's also extensions for SQL Server or MySQL or whatever. So if I now change the language mode to, say, for example, SQL, also the icon over here changes. What I did is, like a couple of days before, I put an Azure SQL database in the cloud in West Europe. So supposedly the data center should be around here near Amsterdam. And I can connect with that. So because I installed the SQL Server plugin, I now get extra commands from my command palette. And now I can say Microsoft SQL connect. I call the TDNL of TechDays Netherlands. And if all goes okay, I have connected now. Super. So here you already see like Intellisense, star from, and I'm doing Controlspace. And here I got like, basically when I connected to the cloud to my Azure SQL database, it grabbed a bunch of information. And now, thanks to that, I have Intellisense in my file. So this is my database. I know this is the namespace. And here I got all the tables. So let's say, for example, here, customer. If I now type in Ctrl-Shift-E, and if the internet connection is with me, boom. So all from this tool. Something that I find pretty handy is, say for example, if I need test data for a web API, I can also save this as a JSON file. Say for example, test.json. And here I got a JSON file. If some manager asks like, hey, I want to print out in Excel, test.xlsx, I believe is the correct extension. And it opens up Excel with all the data from a database. So pretty handy to make some quick reports. Okay. Pretty nice, pretty nice. I still got 1 minute. Let's see what I can still do. Say, for example, I would like to go and connect to Azure. Azure login. I now get a code. It should open the web browser. I paste in that code. Behind the scenes is Azure CLI talking. Yes, I continue. I'm going to use my test account, not one of the professional clients. And now I should be connected. Now with this, also this is again an extension, but it adds Azure Say, for example, I can browse resource groups, or I can create a storage account or a web app or whatever, all from within here. What you can also do is, like Microsoft put in like 400 or 500 sample templates in ARM. I'm going a bit over time. People, if you want to leave, you can leave. If you would keep on following the demo, you're welcome to stay. And here I can type in web app, for example. And in here I can type in, for example, GitHub deploy. And what it now added is, and this is by configuration, like a subfolder called ARM templates. This is the sample template that I installed. And here I got my parameters. Let's say, for example, how we're going to call this TechDays. Audience is awesome. And hosting plan, let's say, for example, TechDays, now 99. By the way, you never saw me save, right? The thing for that is I put in, let's see here, in Preferences, Settings. And these are my personal ones. So basically every file gets saved. After a delay, it gets auto-saved after 1 second. So as long as I'm typing, basically nothing gets saved. As soon as I pause for like 1 second, everything automatically gets saved. It's pretty handy when you're doing development so that you don't lose code when something might happen. By the way, here you also saw that connection because I directly connected to SQL Server Online. I had to SQL database. Here, this is where the server is put in. And that's why I was I was able to easily connect to my SQL database. But back to my ARM template. So I got this one, here I got the other template. Now let's try to deploy that. No, I don't want. Azure deploy. And if you have a bunch of these ARM templates, you can install those. Let's try this one. Using existing. As you see, I have already put something up. And now it's trying to deploy. Like, let's see the output here. And it's now trying to deploy, create a new instance of a web app, and try to get some code from GitHub and install it on the web app. If we go to the portal, we should be seeing that. Let's go into resource groups. I put it in TechDays NL02. And here you see my web app, TechDays audience is awesome, just being generated from my ARM template in Visual Studio Code. Normally now it's still busy, I guess, with taking all the code from GitHub, installing that, putting everything up. But I can already try to browse to it because I'm eager. Yeah, it's still in the creation phase, but it's already there. Well, let's try again. Still. Come on, please. Faster, faster. Come on. This is cloud. Not there yet. Okay. While this is still running, I'm going to close off because you've been a very patient audience, and sorry that I went a couple of minutes over time. I hope you don't mind. Some interesting resources of code.visualstudio.com. This is the place to get all the stuff. My slides will be available online, but feel free to take a picture. The Azure Quick Start templates, it's like several hundreds of them that I just showed. You can find them over here on GitHub. And these are 2 YouTube movies from last week at Microsoft Ignite that also show a lot of cool tips and tricks by one of the people who actually made the tool. I took some ideas, some of the demos I didn't want to show, so that I can show you people like, please go and also check those out and also learn something new from there. But it's also very interesting. Furthermore, if you want to get into contact, I'll be still around at TechDays today and tomorrow till like somewhere in the afternoon. You can follow me on Twitter or just send me an email at kris@azure.be. At the moment, I'm being snowed under by lots of emails, but I try to, in a timely fashion, to respond. And let's quickly see how far this one is doing. Here it's still deploying, but perhaps it might already be ready. Like, let's see. It is loading. Ah, voila. There's my ASP.NET website, which it got retrieved from GitHub. Everything installed from basically Visual Studio Code. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay at TechDays.